because we have the rare occasion when an artist of the standing and stature of Krishen Khanna is going to speak about a work of art by another artist. Most artists love to talk about their own works if given a chance. But in fact, I was wondering whether there are many artists in the younger age group who would like to talk about other arts, other artists. But we have the rare opportunity of having Krishen Khanna speak on a work of art, and he is also the owner of that work of art. I mean, in the sense that it belongs to his personal collection, which makes it all the more. So he has a kind of a possessive approach to the work of art he's going to talk about. Krishen Khanna, as you know, is one of our most eminent and senior painters. He's 85. Is suffering from 3 attacks of viral, as he told me, and the third one is perhaps just now finished. He said that he's not so robust as he usually is, although it doesn't appear. And he is one of our most talkative, in a good sense, artist, whereas I am talkative in the bad sense. So I must hasten to add, he has been on the art scene from the Progressive Artist Group with whom he first showed in, I think, 1949, and from that to about, this is 60 years of being on the art scene, and therefore he is not only a witness to what has happened in the last 60 years, he has been, in a manner of speaking, complicit in that, what has happened. And therefore, we have in fact, Copal has great honor this evening to have Krishen Khanna. This series, as you know, has been concentrating on a single work of art. The idea is to discover meanings which normally, in a cursory manner, some of us are not able to discover. And so there are many people who have been helping us discover new meanings, unsuspected meanings, sometimes impossible meanings in a work of art. But while there is a single work of art, of course, all good speakers go over to other works of art and remind us of how to look at, not merely at a single work of art, but also to remember and resonate the other works of art. With these works, we were waiting because the traffic and all those things and etc. might have come in the way. So thank you very much for coming here, and Krishen Khanna, there you are. Here we are, all ears and eyes.
Thank you very much for those kind words. I'm also, for the first time, Copal has been superseded by painting now. Normally you have Copal and the greatness of Copal and whatever, on the board, and paintings generally take a side view there. However, this painting is a pretty big painting, so it couldn't really be accommodated on that little thing there, and so we have it here. It's almost in its original size. It's about 10 feet long. Before I speak about this painting, I think it would be quite nice. Oh dear, sorry.
But incidentally, everybody should put it off.
Yeah. It's an interesting anecdote way. I'm not a collector, but I do love paintings. And strangely enough, I mean, I like paintings of the kind which are not what I do myself. In other words, it's the other side of me which attracts me to buying paintings or acquiring them or stealing them or sometimes. Now, in this particular case, it's it shows one thing, which is that a painting has its own destiny, you know. It goes to the person that it's destined for. And there's no kind of moving away from this particular fact. It had just been done, and this was on show in Bal Chabra's gallery, which was quite a well-known gallery in those days. Didn't last very long. Like all good galleries, it sort of did its job extremely well. And it had, Akbar had these paintings. There were 3 paintings which he did of this size, and possibly one was larger, which he called the new Juhu. And they were all in black and white. Now I'll come to the whole subject of black and white a bit later. But he did these 3 paintings, and I was happily or unhappily still employed in a bank in those days, and I was in Kanpur. It was a Saturday afternoon. I'd come home, and my mail was there, and the first thing which I opened was an invitation to this exhibition. And I opened it, and it was just like that, much smaller, of course, and couldn't see Akbar's name at the bottom. And I said to my wife, I said, well, you know, it looks as if there's a very fine painter in Bombay, unknown to us, and it's wonderful. And then I turned over, and there it was Akbar Padamsee. So I called up Bal Chowda at that stage, and Bal said, are you excited? I said, yes, I'm excited, all right. He said, you want to buy this painting? I said, of course. How much is it? He said, it's 3,000 rupees. So I said, well, it's a lot of money. But he said, well, hang on. I'll forego my commission of 1,000 if you want it. So that was that. I said, that's still 2,000. He said, yes, I got a bit of good news for you. He says, I sold something of yours, and so there's 1,000 rupees due to you. So actually, I paid 1,000 rupees from this painter. and it came to me. Well, and I didn't have a wall big enough to show it, so I used to have it spread out, and we sit back, smoke a cigarette, and have a drink, and take a look at this picture and enjoy it enormously, of course, thinking that we were in the Greek landscape ourselves. Well, soon after that, Lalit Kala Academy writes to me and says they want, and Akbar had suggested that this painting be selected for this exhibition, which is going to tour the world, go all the way around. And this was good, because I was resigning from the bank around the same time. And I thought, well, it would be an excellent idea that somebody else will be looking after this work while I'm away. And so it went. It was away for a year. And by the time it came back, I also returned. And I got a call from the Lalit Kala Academy. A rather joyous call, actually. The man was absolutely thrilled. He said, sir, your painting is back. I said, oh, that's very good. Thank you very much. He said, yeah. He said, but you know, it's somewhat destroyed. I said, what do you mean destroyed? He said, well, the good news is that the insurance company is prepared to pay the full amount, 10,000 rupees. So I said, well, hang on, I'll come and have a look at it, and then you'll decide, see? So I went along, and there I saw it. The picture in those days was, the backing was pretty primitive in those days. There was some sort of straw underneath it, which pushed its way up, and so the level of the painting had been upset, bumps in it and so on. And I said, well, okay, I'll take it home, and you can negotiate with the company that I'll accept half the money, and I'll take the painting. So the company agreed, and they were very happy, so was I. And the painting came to my house, and then I stretched it and put water in the back, and there it was, as is, in perfect condition. And we had it. So then I met Akbar, who was in Delhi in those days. I said, I made some money on your painting. So he said, what? I said, yes, I got 5,000 chips for this thing. So he chewed his handkerchief, as is his wont, And he said, well, you know, that's not fair. I said, what do you mean it's not fair? I paid you for your painting at that time. He said, no, but you know, you can't be making money on my painting. I thought there's some truth in that, of course. But he said, so I said, well, Bal is coming here, whose gallery who sold the painting in the first place. So I said, Bal is coming, so we'll give it to Bal to decide as to what to do. So Bal comes along, the story is narrated, and Bal says, okay, I'll take my commission of 1,000 now. And he says, 1,000 can go to Akbar, and you keep the other 3. So I said, fine. Akbar was not entirely happy, but he was not unhappy. So that's and since then, of course, I nominated this picture in my will to my daughter, and they wanted to buy a house somewhere, and there was somebody, I won't name who, but this person was prepared to give me a house in Panchsheel for this painting. So I told my daughter, I said, you're wanting a house in Panchsheel, here's your offer, take it. I mean, why just do a nice little exchange, and there you are. So she talked to her husband, and her husband said, absolutely not. That we don't transact cultural property. So there we are. So I still got this painting, and there's no hope of ever selling it at all to anybody. Now, that's the story about this painting so far, as to how I came to acquire it. And indeed, several of my works have been acquired in more or less the same idiotic, fortuitous kind of fashion. About this painting now, I think sometimes it's interesting to, when approaching a painting, to say what there isn't in it. Going on the negative side, for instance. It's not a linear proposition. Unlike many others. Raza did around the same time, a little earlier, he'd done pictures of houses and so on, which were very beautiful. But they were very carefully delineated in pencil and then filled in with very precise coloring and so on. Now, this is not a linear at all. I mean, it wasn't even designed, I don't think. He didn't have even the charcoal markings on this thing when he began this painting. It began as some sort of an idea in his mind, and he chose acrylic, which in those days was a rare commodity. I mean, it wasn't as sophisticated as it's now. And he chose that on an unprimed canvas, which is the right thing, the right base for acrylic. And he proceeded with a large brush. And as he went along, the picture develops, and there's a developmental quality about this painting. It goes from one end to the other and back again, top, then various ideas come in between. He's using black and white. He's able to shift and move much faster and more in keeping with his kind of spontaneous vision of what he wants to say. And the vision isn't a static idea which has to be carried through. It is a growing proposition. As it grows, as it happens, one form dictates another form and another form and another form. In between, of course, there are changes, and those changes can take place when you're dealing with a black and white picture. And you can obliterate whole areas with white, paint again, and so forth. So using black and white was a very purposeful decision in doing this kind of thing. I think I will a little later contrast this with another painting, which is absolutely its opposite, which is El Greco's view of Toledo, which is a great painting. So is this. But it's a very different order of events, a very different order of thinking. Whereas El Greco's painting is romantic, it's ominous, it's foreboding, contains a great deal of his personal feelings in it. This painting does not. This painting is like a crystal which has been formed, I mean, through without any preconception. But, so the ground was laid and the seeds were sown, and that's how the picture came about. Toledo, as you will see, they've been good enough to produce that painting for me, because I think, can you see that? Just a little flash. No, there we are. It's altogether a very attractive painting. It's also ominous. It's very romantic. It's very Byronic, if I can use that word here. It's like Byron's line. He says, I'd love to be a sharer in your fierce and far delight, a portion of the tempest and of thee. And that really dictates, the tenor of this painting. The cloud over it is as important as the foreground, which is not as green as it's here actually, but it's you can see the heights of the buildings which are there. They're not. Maybe they were the original value, one doesn't know, but they are single out the whole tenor of the landscape, of the cityscape as it is. But it shows you there are two different temperaments which are at work here. One was a romantic temperament, which sort of deals with personality. I mean, El Greco's personality, if you know anything about El Greco, it fits in exactly with this kind of work which he is doing. It also reverberates with overtones which are there, and which also leave the spectator free to choose his own overtones, and to it's not as specific as, say, Akbar's painting is. Akbar's painting has no personal overtones. It is actually what Keats called negative capability. It's he's withdrawn himself and let the painting happen like a formation of a crystal, for instance. Can we go back to Akbar again, yes? Yeah. It's, as you can see, it's very different in temperament, in very different in the way of its execution. I'm not saying that one is better than the other. That sort of thing doesn't arise anyway. It's a different order of events which takes place. He has purposely not used color because black and white, as the Chinese discovered much earlier, has the greatest possible span of nuance which can be created between a black and white. It also dispenses with the whole business of using local color, and therefore you escape the whole business of trying of being naturalistic. That's immediately got rid of, you see. And so the work enters into a category of a work of art, and has to be seen in that light. That it's a black and white, but it contains all the nuances of a black and white. And things just happen. There's a tree in the foreground. It was necessitated because there's little punctuations of the dark which appear in different places, which hold the whole thing together. This is not a mural. A mural would have had a totally different attitude, a way of working and everything else. But it confines itself to the area in which it is painted. A mural doesn't. A mural goes over. It's basically, it's a classic. It deals with the kind of a classical element, which leaves the artist free and the spectator almost free. I mean, you look at it, there are not too many derivatives which you can make out of this thing. The experience is purely pictorial. There are no human beings, as you see in this thing, which would have added, and the same is with El Greco, for instance. There are no human beings there, which would have added, again, to a kind of a feeling, human feeling, an interjection of human feeling into what is actually being made at that time is a structure. And the structure would then get affected by the presence of human beings. It's very strange because there's several. Raza, in his painting, which he did, there are no human beings either. Now, if you contrast those pictures, say, with English landscape painting, you find there are always human beings. Even in Turner, who is probably the most abstract of them all, human beings do figure, and they do interject the human element within the painting. Here, there is no question of any human element, the entry of any human element in any of this. I don't propose to talk too long. I think it would be nice if you ask questions. Yeah, I mean, we can discuss this. Not that I'm going to answer your questions, but I think one can use a picture as a point of conversation, as a point of departure. And I leave it at that. Now, if there's anything you would like to say. Okay? Yes?
Mr. Khanna, do you find resemblance with Cubism also? Because we find certain structure, Cubism, and contemporary, or Picasso Guernica, for example, where he used also contrasting structure.
I think, yeah, it's a good question, because I think, for instance, Picasso's Guernica, black and white as it is, so it gets rid of color to start with, you see, and therefore has the punch of making a statement without the intervention of color, without the assistance of color. But I still think that Picasso's Guernica carries a big load of human feeling and a political ideology, and that comes through very clearly. And it's so to that extent, it takes away from the structural element of the painting itself. This point has been made by a very famous critic, Paul Max, what's his name? Yeah, but anyway, Picasso was never a sort of a person who, unlike Braque, for instance, Braque was far more interested in making monuments, like crystals again. But Picasso always had the feeling of bringing in the human element and what he had to say in terms of himself. I mean, he was very important. What he had to say was terribly important to him. And he's almost overbearing in the things that he says. He stamps it down. He doesn't let it happen. That's Picasso. Yes.
See, one side we say that this is black and white,
yeah,
and this is colored. But black and white are also good colors.
Of course. No, yes, they're not colors. I mean, I would say that it's almost a negation of color, but it has the biggest spectrum within it, and therefore it is a complete substitute. For instance, supposing if he'd, instead of using black and white, if he'd just taken red, as has been done by several painters I know. Now the span of red, what you can get within the red, it's very limited. Whereas in the case of black and white, as we know, the Chinese, the Japanese, they did it. I mean, a long time ago. You don't even think about color when you're looking at that work. Yeah.
You mentioned that both the paintings of El Greco and Akbar's paintings, they do not have the presence of human beings. but isn't the presence of human beings implied in the built form, which is the word that architects use for a constructed space? It's implied everywhere, both in El Greco's painting and also in this painting. I mean, by removing the physical presence of the human being, do we really succeed in removing the human presence from the scene?
I mean, you know, for instance, I would say that certainly the cathedrals or the churches, what have been made in the El Greco painting, for instance, or the houses and things which are here, we know human beings made them. But actually, what is evident to us, or the evidence which we have, is there aren't any people.
They are all indoors.
Maybe indoors, yeah.
No,
maybe they made them, and maybe the city was then abandoned. You know, I mean, you can get that. This is kite flying. I mean, you can your liberty to imagine and say and think anything you want to, but it is not necessarily implied specifically in the work that you're saying. You are at liberty to make any construct you like, but is the evidence there? I mean, that's the question. And this is the classical argument, that you cannot proceed, you cannot transgress beyond the evidence which is available to you. Whereas in the Romantics, I mean, this happened in their poetry, it happened in their paintings, all sorts of, you can just shoot off, and then everybody's opinion is important, the artist's opinion is very important, and you can say that the artist thought this and he did that. That's a whole different thing, you know. Evocation, for instance, of the past, painting, for instance, of ruins, the association with ruins, all of that sort of becomes a part of the Romantic past. And here, for instance, there is no such thing. I mean, there is no romantic association with anything here. I mean, you're looking at simply structure. And I'd say one little thing further, that having done these paintings, and he moved on to color. Mark you, when he went on to color, he chose a very narrow spectrum. And his spectrum, he was using complementaries. He was using a red and a blue, maybe red and a green, and that's where it stayed. But there again, in the handling of that, there is something of this. I mean, it's a kind of a Akbar Padamsee sort of removed himself from what is happening there. You know, there's a kind of impersonality about it. The work, it becomes important within itself, and it is not contingent on the personality of the painter. You don't have to, you know, unlike Van Gogh, you go into the history of Van Gogh and then you see a painting, and then the painting takes on a different aura. You know, all of which is okay, valid. But in terms of strict art criticism, you can, and then what we're seeing today, for instance, and a lot of art, is anybody's cup of tea. You can say what you like and do what you like, and you know, the evidence, which is the physical evidence, which is presented to you, is not necessarily taken much account of. And it's a sort of a lifting off. It's a lifting off ground from any other thoughts, you know, which have necessarily nothing to do with what is actually being presented. And I think it's important. And just as I think the artist, when he was conceiving this kind of, as he went along, and this is very spontaneously done. In other words, he was in it, been making this kind of construction when he was doing this. You know. Even the figures which he has painted. Now there you see, now when he's painting, for instance, his metascapes, or these paintings, even the metascapes which are in color, they're pretty free. I mean, you're looking at the picture as such. The moment he paints a figure, The figure has its own compulsions and its own associations. And they are, and although he's trying to construct within the figure itself, you cannot help but think that, the figure's overtaking, the feelings of the figure go into it without, and it interferes, to my mind, with the total structure which is being presented, or which he's trying to present at that time. Whereas in his metascapes or these pictures, he obviates, the whole thing is sort of cut off. He is not dealing with that problem at all. He left it. And therefore it is more successful. You can say it's a limited objective. I mean, you can use any words you like, but the point is, at the same time, you have a work which is complete within itself. That's important.
चेहरे वो अलग से बनाते हैं.
Huh?
चेहरे अलग से बनाते हैं. हेड वाले जो है ना,
No.
सीरीज वाले से बनाते हैं. फिगर्स जो है
वो सीरीज ऐसा altogether ब्रश के साथ जो करते हैं, नहीं वो तो बिल्कुल लायता मामला. But that's altogether, it's got nothing to do with this. It's got nothing to do even with the oils which he does. I mean, those are watercolors which he's done. And charging of the brush is important there, you see.
मुझे खाली इसलिए याद है कि फिगरेटिव काम भी वो करते हैं पर अलग से.
हाँ. मेरे ज़हन के मुताबिक वो इतनी पुख्ता नहीं है.
Can I put a personal question to you?
Please.
I wonder whether your daughter and your son-in-law, they are here. What was your response, when your son didn't like to, he refused to, transact it in exchange for a house,
I was delighted, of course, because I haven't sold any of the pictures which I have bought,
Right.
and he didn't want to sell them either. In other words, we are not merchants of art. We have acquired works because we like them and we like to look at them. And besides which, when anything, I mean, some of these works have been with me now for 30, 40 years, and I can't suddenly sort of divorce it, I can't throw the picture out just for the sake of money, for the sake of some figure in some bank account somewhere, These are palpable presences in my mind and in my living. And they form a part of me. I mean, so to that extent, Yes.
It's a comment about black and white as negation of color, and the Chinese experience of black and white providing the infinite continent for nuance. I think in the Chinese tradition it is in calligraphy that this experiment is carried on in an absolute sort of a sense. And the only negation is the emperor being allowed to use vermilion in calligraphy.
I'm sorry, will you repeat that again, just that last one?
Chinese calligraphy is entirely an experiment in black and white. The only exception is the emperor being allowed, or emperor claiming the privilege to write in official documents in vermilion.
Yeah.
But that calligraphy is about being categorical, not about nuance
Yes.
at all.
Yes.
So there's just a comment.
Yes, sure. And I said that because the Chinese, they felt that the implements they were using, which is a brush, and the charging of the brush is so important there. And not only that, it's a relationship to the kind of paper that is being used, on which this ink, sumi, is being, how it acts on that. All that is there in the mind, and it's the spontaneous action which determines the form of whatever is being done.
And this intensity is pursued to its ultimate in the tradition of Chinese calligraphy, where banished scholars, without resources, pursue calligraphy with the most elementary instruments, with the most elementary wherewithal of color and brush. And that in Chinese calligraphic tradition sort of marks the ultimate boundary of nuance.
See, Chinese tradition in calligraphy wasn't only limited to calligraphy. They painted pictures. They painted wonderful abstracts. I mean, there was a wonderful painter by the name of Chowda who painted the most incredible pictures, and they were almost one stroke works. But within that one stroke, you see, this is the whole secret of that is the way the brush is charged. The charging of the brush is so important, and then the way you actually apply it to the paper, which has to be in terms of what the shape that you are actually working. So the whole thing, it has very intense ink at the tip and a reservoir of water at the back. And how you discharge the water, how you manipulate these according to your particular, whatever you're doing, you know. I mean, I think that requires a great mastery. And often enough, the thing doesn't work. So what do they do? There's no alteration. Then you tear it up and you try it again. You do the same thing again, you know. I happened to work with a Japanese calligrapher once in Japan, but I realized that this was not a thing that I was going to keep up with for too long, since I'm not Japanese and not living in Japan. It's not going to happen. But I use the methodologies which they of ink, and I used it to very different purposes. But basically, the ideas are the same: the way the ink reacts to paper and how whatever. You know.
I just want to come back to the comment that you made about this picture being complete. You know, when does a picture become complete? And the process that you actually pointed out, to a very large extent, is the same that happens even in social sciences. That you take great care in creating or sort of producing objectivity. It almost seems here that this picture in its completeness competes with the subjectivity or intentionality of the painter. If that is how a picture becomes complete, then what happens? I mean, where do you see I don't want to get into this postmodernism and all that, but where do you think the artist really been watching its completeness, or does the artist participate apart from just being a viewer of his or her own paintings? What happens to the fate of the painter in its completeness?
Well, I mean, I think the artist also becomes a viewer of his own work, and quite often over a period of time, I mean not even a long period of time, what he's done is one thing done in a kind of a frenzy or a moment, and then when he views it again, he's a different kind of a person who's watching, who's now being critical of his own work. And I think it's a good thing. I mean he's reacting to himself, you know. He's quite often very amazed at what has happened, because he didn't think that it would happen, and it's happened. You know, there's some magic about it somewhere. But to come back to the question of when is the picture finished, I don't think you can ever say that it's finished or not finished. You know, it's absolutely up to the artist whether he can go on further and further and further or not. You know, he can continue or he need not. He thinks it's enough. It's really up to him when he's doing this. Or if he's working under a master, then the master will kick him and say, "Oh no, carry on, you know, we'll do some more." But that is not the situation these days, where the artist actually is doing the work himself. He knows when to stop.
जी और जानने की इच्छा है।
हाँ।
तो आप इसको देखते हो, हमने बहुत बार देखा ही जाहिर है। तो पहला ध्यान जो वाइट पर है, वो लाइट की तरफ जाता है कि घर जो है वो सफेद है इसकी तरफ जाता है
दोनों तरफ है
Like we have
it is almost a 100 it is a 50-50 proposition here. It's a very good question because you've got to determine what kind of percentage that you want. You want the black to dominate, you want the white to show up, everything. But I think in this thing the scatter is pretty equal. There's more white than there is black. But the intensity of the black is in a sense bigger, more intense than the white wherever it happens. So it punctuates, it punches in, you know, and holds the picture. It's like supportive elements within the picture itself.
Maybe that is the realization of the picture being complete.
I think so.
When he ceases to add more black.
Yeah.
Because the light, I mean, you know, we're looking at the source of the light and the picture is actually bathed in the light.
Yeah.
And that is almost like an epiphany because the light is so persistent,
Yes.
in the center of the painting.
Yes.
But the black militates back all the time. There's such a persistence of the black as well.
Yeah, but let's also not. The other thing is that the canvas he's painting on is white. So he's actually entering a white space. And he's using the black to activate the white space. And it's for him to go, and then of course the grey intervenes as a passage between the two, as a connector even, you know. But certainly I think the punctuation is with the elements of blacks which have been put in places. I don't think he could have measured it. It's not a measured painting in that sense, that he could have, you know, when he couldn't have drawn this out and then this will be black and then it'll be there. It's very interesting, this question, because he did a similar painting with red roofs in a sort of white and quasi-black little lines and things. And to my mind, it was not very successful because I think the red roofs were referential. They referred to a natural red roof and so on in a work which is not referential, you know. So there was that tussle there. And the other thing was that the reds remained in isolated places without relating themselves to the totality of the painting. And therefore I think it's sort of the scheme, if I can call it that, misfired, you know. But I think in a painting like this, and in the other paintings which he did three such paintings, large ones, and each one was bought by a painter, by the way. And Bal bought one, Hussain bought the other, and I bought this. In each one of these, I think there's an element of spontaneity, there's an element of construction, which, see, normally when you think of doing houses and so on, you draw them, you know where they're going to be, etc., etc., etc. But I think the magic of this painting is that using a big brush, the modulation of the brush determined where the houses were going to be. And the windows and so on, the doors, etc., they were left, you know, they happened to come to the right kind of place. There's no preconception in this painting. Unlike the El Greco, for instance, or like the Raza that I was talking about, the whole thing is preconceived, it's planned, it's meticulous, it's down there. There was no such effort here. It happened. And I don't think, see, the other thing is, hangs on this story now. The other painting he did, which was on board, this is on canvas, Bal bought that, and he put it up in his sitting room, opposite a big window, which you sort of let in a lot of sea air. And within no period of time, the paint had sort of flaked off or minimized, you know, it just went. Now, when that happened, Akbar said, I'll paint it, I'll set this right. And he took it, and he painted this. And he thought he was repairing it. You know, another kind of procedure takes over. And that procedure, being Bal, he said, no, this is no good. And he bought the painting, paid him for it, but he said, no, this doesn't work. You take the picture. So Akbar took the picture. He did, I suppose, a little more work to it. Then there was somebody wanting signatures or what the hell, I don't know. But they bought that painting. And so Akbar comes to Bal and says, look, this is your share. But you can't tamper. You see, it's a one-time throw in a sense that you're either prepossessed with a sort of a vision which then formulates itself as you go along. You know, the vocabulary happens then, there. And there's no sort of thinking back and saying, now this might... Gaitonde was like that. He never went back to a painting, you know. It either came out or it didn't, or he destroyed it after that. No. That can happen. I mean, every picture doesn't have to succeed in that sense. And certainly anything like this doesn't. It's a one-time throw. You know? And that's, I think, its forte, its strength lies in that fact. It's spontaneous, and yet it's like a crystal. It's just happened. Yeah.
To get back to this question of when is a work of art complete, I have two observations. One is that a professor of mine wrote a book called Form of the Unfinished, in which he propounded the notion that certain great poems in English language are incomplete. But they are incomplete not because the poets felt lazy or lost interest in it too long, that the form itself is such that they are destined to remain forever incomplete. So there is no sense of completion attached to, for instance, Ezra Pound's Canto, Hyperion, Fairy Queen, etc. The second proposition that I bring to your notice is Mallikarjun Mansu, the great singer. He will sing, and very arbitrarily, whenever he felt there was enough, he will stop. Patti ji, क्या हुआ? बोले थोड़ा प्यासा रहने दो. You know, what he meant was that the completion is leaving a work of art there where it is. And the completion would be brought in, if at all, by the rasik, by the viewer, by the listener.
You add to it.
You add to it. That is the completion. There is no completion intended. And whatever is intended is absolutely arbitrary.
Well, I think there can be two views on this point. I mean, I think...
there can be many.
No, exactly. No, I mean, the whole thing is that one does, in fact, working, you think that not because you can't do it, you can't fill up the space, so there's no compulsion in filling up space. You can always do that. You can go on doing it. In fact, it happened with me at one time. I could never finish a painting. It just went on and on and on and on. I never knew where it was going, you know. And what finally broke it was when I went into swimming. But there it is, you know. It just happens. You can't go back. You can't change it. You can't do anything. The only thing you can do is to tear it up, you know, and start again. So. On the other hand, I mean, I do think, for instance, you talk about Ezra Pound just now, and of course you can't say that Ezra Pound should have done this or this is incomplete. It's like a huge literary diary, actually, the whole thing, and history which he goes on with. But you compare him with, for instance, his protege, T.S. Eliot. Now, Eliot actually does complete his poem. I mean, there's no question. And there's a certain sense of fulfillment, I think, when that happens. But I think that when large areas are left alone purposefully, it is as important as filling in those areas which were filled. And I think this is something which the artist has to determine. Raza has done this in many of his paintings. There are large areas which are almost, you know, not vacant. They're not vacant, they're not unfilled, but they are like the caesura, in a sense like a huge pause, which comes in there. And I think that's balancing out what you do against that whole area, which is could be a void, but is not a void, because it's bound by your canvas, by your four sides. And this talk can go on forever.
Is there a glass of water there?
Thank you.
Anybody else?
You would agree with me, this is one of the most participative talks we ever had. There have been comments and things of that kind, but this is for the first time perhaps that he spoke briefly and then allowed others to come up with questions. And that is also an interesting way of looking at a work of art rather than singly other viewpoints also to emerge. So thank you very much, all of you, and more. First of all, Krishen Khanna, for having given us the pleasure of looking at a work of art so sensitively and imaginatively, and to all of you who sat through and asked questions and offered comments. And then now, outside, let's meet again before you go.
Just come back. Black and white.